let's start with our first sculpture. Medium is very nice in it that it contains stamps in different categories. So we can use, for instance, a disc and add it as a singular stroke. And
Albert, I have a web page on.
what?
On my media output, I have a web page.
Okay.
Facebook page.
Just wait 1 second and I'll fix that right up. We will have
Super.
notifications. Probably should use a little bit of additional stuff to make the notifications away, enabling silent mode, disturb mode, focus assistant, priority only, and we should be good to go. Okay. Mouse cursor away and away we go. So yeah, Medium by Adobe is a virtual sculpting software that enables us to work with a variety of shapes and strokes in order to create three-dimensional surfaces. And three-dimensional surfaces can be, if willingly, they can be printed out or whatever. The smaller we scale it, now it's really tiny, the object, we can go ahead and start adding things to it. Either by distorting them, by using the move tool, which enables me to grab parts of it and do interesting shapes with it, such as this. Looks like a saddle. And let's see. I'm gonna check how everything is, and if we are live, it should be live. Give us a holler. Live. Yes. Okay. Mushroom out of it. Okay, we've got a first suggestion. Mushroom will do. So I will start adding things to make it look like a mushroom. So I'm going to add another layer so that I don't mess up the previous work I've done here. And we'll add, grab a play tool and nice stamp that would kind of like give us a mushroomy thing. I could actually just draw first stem for the mushroom. So by just clicking the trigger button in Adobe Medium, I can create this sort of a small type of a stem for it. I'm going to add some thickness scaling to it. Smooth it out a bit. Make it a bit more interesting. I could hide that one layer out of it. We don't see that bothering us too much. So we can go ahead with the mushroom and we'll use a move brush and okay, like this. We've got some sort of a stem. It should be getting thicker from the stem. I'll use the inflate brush for that. And inflate it. Could add a bit of strength to it. It's very low by it. Let's make it a bit smaller. And then start carving away. Play brush. We'll start making this sort of like let's make it a huge mushroom. we start making it sort of like tree branches around here. So I'm going to carve away some parts and smooth it. It's going to look a bit rough in the beginning, but it'll end up looking just fine once we work on it a bit more. Need to be rather efficient with it. And carving it into these sort of shapes that would be a bit more interesting to the eye. So there are a lot of different kind of mushrooms, but we could see, you can see the power working in a virtual environment compared to a traditional 2D environment, in the way that we can actually zoom in really close, and which we can of course do in 2D as well. But we've got an added benefit that instead of just working in two-dimensional X and Y axes, we can actually incorporate a lot of different kind of strokes, because we can use the depth as well in a much more natural way compared to the traditional workflow of content creation. Okay, now we're getting something out. And the stem a bit more interesting. We can clone these as much as we want. It's an additional benefit that comes from working in a virtual environment. I love working in Adobe Medium because it can really kind of like take you into the thing that you're working with. I've created sort of like surreal house floor plans and everything with it. It's really nice. I'm going to just use a regular clay brush and maybe some smoothing. Steady stroke a bit, and that should be good. And we'll increase the smooth strength a bit, so we get a bit better smoothing, so we get away with the jaggedness that comes with it. Medium is really cool because you can also paint stuff with it, and it's very efficient, so it doesn't really require as much of computing power as you might expect. Of course, depends if you're working with like tens of millions of voxels, then it might get kind of in the way. But working smartly is the way they did in the 90s, because computer power wasn't abundantly available, so people had to actually be able to work with, do good stuff with less computing power. So let's see if we can make this as scenery, sort of like a scenery. It's kind of like a rough beginning. Let's make a base for it as well. And start working with the silhouettes and the depth a bit further away, so you can kind of like see my hands working instead of my head being. Delicately, smoothly, with a steady hand. Yeah, this is getting really close to the traditional method of sculpting, so sort of like the circle is closed. I mean, 3D was more like an engineer's work, so it needed to. In the beginning, you need to actually be able to code everything, and so that made most of the stuff very stiff in comparison. And the tools have evolved immensely during these years, and I really love the way we can work this nowadays. So it's really something. So we can inflate this. Yeah, it's inflated head of the mushroom. And it's really nice after Adobe bought Medium from Oculus, we did get some updates and bugs fixed, which was great. And so the version that I'm using is the Adobe Medium. It also has this nice thing that we can I have the panel where the Facebook panel pinned, but you can't see it in the feed, which is really nice. So
Back on.
I'm getting live there.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Okay. Now we have the mushroom sort of like, and then we could use a little bit of smoothing around. I think the smooth brushes should be logarithmic in terms of strength. I mean, at the way it's, I think it's sort of linear. So if you have a really like a large scale object like this mushroom is rather big-ish in terms of the smooth tool is like super slow, but I mean, like, I do understand that it needs to be very delicate as well in order to serve the details as well. So there's the other one for the festival, which is very important to work fine. Otherwise, he needs to be cutting into my weird mutt doing this work.
Thanks for your patience.
But let's see if we can kind of like thin out this part. It looks a bit thick over here. So we go and just grab a regular clay brush and make it like rather small and cut our way through, like drilling a hole. So you can kind of like work the same you would work with traditional methods. Just work with it. It's thin over there and wormholes. Cosmic mushroom. Okay, now we're getting something done here, and just in order to get things a bit more interesting, the theme of the festival was burn. So I was thinking about what if I got a request here from the festival to incorporate the burn theme, and I think I'm going to be putting a bonfire on top of this sort of giant mushroom. So let's start working with that. I'm going to add a sculpt layer, and let's see if we have some really cool stamps that kind of get us halfway through without actually having to work all the way in. Let's see, I've got bone, mechanical numbers, organic, primitives. Primitives will work fine if we just have a regular block, which we should-ish. Okay, let's use those and make a bonfire out of them. I'm gonna be making this a different color. So I'm gonna make it have a little bit of default and the color could be something of a brown to build with. So we have these sort of like logs over here. I'm gonna have a really big, huge view, so I'm gonna make sort of like a natural scale logs here, sort of like a bonfire. We do need rocks as well. There's no bonfire without rocks, you know. Oh, it's kind of dark though, but we'll make it a bit lighter. Find a nice woodish color there. And another one. Kind of blending in together, but that's good. Don't mind. I have some variations. I will be doing different colors here and different sizes. Okay, it's getting there. So we're getting the first sticks of wood incorporated. We'll make a flame as well. We'll see if we can use the emissive material there. I haven't been using too much materials in medium because it's usually good to use a proper rendering engine like a Cycles or Keyshot or whatever to sort of, we could actually use that color again. So. And it needs to be black in the center, of course, and red of coals. So like that, that's the start of the bonfire, and let's see if we can do cool rocks here. We'll use a stamp which should have these sort of organic shapes for rocks as well. Let's see, bones called organic primitives rocks, and we'll use a few of these, but let's make them like super bright and emissive, and let's see if we can get the color of that right, like that, and this will have a lot of emission. That's emissive, and the strength will be a lot. Okay, let's see if it emits. Yeah, those are the hot coals that we have. Yeah. We get this sort of I'm kind of like spinning around so they'll get nauseous doing the bonfire, building it block by block and adding these sort of like hot coals in it. Could use a few black ones as well, I think. That would be good, but then I could be using emissive shaders. I'm going to add a darker one, dark color, and a not emissive one. That's a default. Yeah, that's good. And a few of these scattered around. A few black ones. Black ones around. Let's see if we've got any messages here. Right. So if there's any audience, you can just holler around. There seems to be something with the messages on the Facebook not really getting through, which is no wonder. It's a bit different setup than in the previous one, so some surprises may arise. Hey, smoke is something that we can't really do here in medium. If I'd be using tilt brush, it would have a nice tool for that. I am going to make this one really glowy and very strong, so I'm going to make some flames here.
Albert, could you go back to the feed for me? For the output?
So it's always switching from that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still don't have it.
Okay, I'm going to Alt-Tab into the medium. It's better to have that one on now, so.
Yeah. Super.
It's always if I interact with the window on the Facebook that the HDMI output loses its stream.
Yeah.
So that's not a good thing, but yeah, we'll work with it. This will work fine. So we've got a mushroom here. We could add actually some color into it. So I'm gonna select that and then just use my paintbrush and select the nice tan brown color. My Facebook audience is apparently, I'm not getting the feed because if I switch to that one, I need to kind of like cheat a bit and watch the comments on my phone soon. So bear with me, fine people. It should work out fine soon-ish. Let's see, maybe a bit lighter. Something like that. Okay, that's good. We're getting some color. I'm going to add some light as well there on the bonfire. The whole bonfire is a bit tilted, but we could work with that. That's good. And the stem of the mushroom should be a bit lighter, right? Gradiating from this one to a bit lighter. Oops, that's a bit too much. Small dabs of paint will do. But we can use some smudging as well. And okay, let's select another color using base as a color and just fade it in nice and smoothly. I'm gonna check the comments on the Facebook feed just soon enough. The whole bonfire looks a bit tilted, so it's not really at the center. So I'm gonna go ahead and move all of the layers that I have, and I'm going to select all of these layers and move them around until I get sort of centered. That looks pretty good. Yeah. Now the bonfire is sort of at the center. I need to go ahead and paint some light into it so that we get the bonfire sort of working. So the illusion of light coming from the bonfire. Like this. A bit less and maybe a bit smoother. Taking the hardness all the way down and just dabbing a little bit of it to have this sort of a burning sensation there. Let's use that color a bit. We could, medium has pretty decent lighting setups as well, but it's not like super good. Most of the time you'd like to paint textures manually. So that should be getting something. And let's inflate the base like a lot. It's going to take a while. The inflate brush is insanely slow to work with for some reason. So it's going to take a while for me to get the shape of the stem, so to speak, into something agreeable.
To ask questions.
Yeah.
How localized is the inflate tool? Like, can you set the area of effect, or?
No, it just pushes all of the voxels according to the average normal, sort of,
okay,
in a spherical way. So it's rather rudimentary, but it'll do its trick in most cases.
And
so
can you scale the affected area, like
mask it? No, there's no masking tools and stuff.
No, okay.
So it's basically like really nice in terms of like getting a. Well, we could add some people maybe standing here. That might be interesting on the mushroom. But we do need a base for the mushroom. So I have one additional layer here, which I don't really need that much. It has something that I don't really want now, so I'm going to be using and removing all the material out of it. Erase it and erase that, and that. It's a very boxy tool. It's very nice. And okay, let's position the camera so that you can see the bonfire a bit more closely. There it is. Whoop. It's really close by. Sorry. It's like a millimeter accuracy from me to get there. I could hook up the camera to this view and then work with it. That might be nice. So I could parent the camera to the sculpt. And now, now you will see how I will work a bit more around here on the bonfire.
Is it a fire on top of a mushroom?
Yep. It's the burn theme. Okay, and let's add another layer for some flames. I think I'm gonna be doing a first flame just manually, and then I'm gonna copy them around a bit. And
is the camera angle meant to be a bit different now? Because it's fixed on the output.
Yeah, I fixed it on the
bonfire.
Yeah, on the detail. Yeah. So let's see. It needs to be highly emissive, of course. That's one of the things. Emission strength to max, and my color should be yellowish, orangish, whitish. Something like that might work. Let's see.
So, Albert, in Blender, you can like have static animations on so you can make like a kind of a wavy animation on an object. Is it possible with this software too?
No, it has no animation properties of any kind.
So it's just static for sculpture?
Yeah. Just static. See if we can kind of pull the shape around a bit to small. Now we're at the very minuscule scale because the bonfire is rather small and the mushroom is rather big.
And you're able to scale your own avatar
to
work on this?
Actively only, yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, now we'll get some shapes for the... And need to inflate that a bit on the end, not too much though. Well, we'll use that. And I'll be using this guy, and let's see if it crashes, because sometimes when I define it as a stamp, that's my stamp now, and I should be able to put in a lot more of this.
Nice. And you can scale them with the tool, so there is... Oh yeah, cool. That's fantastic.
Okay, we're getting some flames, and we need to light them as well. At the end, kind of like cheat the texture, but kind of like the way it flows from underneath and across everything.
And how have you gotten that particle effect?
That's just because the voxel resolution is very low, so it kind of like makes these boxes, but it serves the purpose in this instance.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's sort of like good, but I could probably work with the coloring of these guys a bit, so to make it a bit lighter, so that we get this sort of like an effect of fire there. Let's see, I'm gonna swap from my custom stamp, and we do need some rocks, by the way. I could actually do them first with clay brush and a rocky color.
Do you take suggestions from Twitch as well?
I'm not on Twitch, so.
Well, we're streaming to Twitch, so.
If somebody's giving suggestions from there, just
follow
follow.
Twitch and let you know if anyone has any.
Because if you have a problem with Facebook, then maybe that's another alternative.
Yeah, that would work. I'm gonna make another layer so they're meant together too heavily. Maybe a little bit variation to the color. Not all rocks are alike. I'm gonna just place them around a bit to make a bonfire. You can actually, with some rocks and stuff, you can kind of go away with using the same one a lot of times if you just scale and position it separately. So it should be good. Let's see if we can get it across here. A bit small to the color. Yeah, this is the first time doing this with the Oculus, with the Quest 2, but I had to use it because then, if I'd be using my trusty old Oculus Rift consumer version 1, which I love, it's like really steady and always good, but the thing is it would occupy the only available HDMI slot.
Of course, yeah.
So we had to...
It was before they had their own video processor.
No, actually this is streaming just frame buffers in a compressed format from through the USB, so...
I see.
Yeah, it's not like... But yeah, it still uses I'm currently using the Oculus Link on the Medium, on the Oculus Quest 2 headset, so that means that the PC is doing all the heavy lifting, so not... Right. There's not... The Medium doesn't exist in
the hardware isn't handling any of it, only your computer hardware.
My computer hardware currently is doing all of the work.
Yeah, exactly.
that's actually a better option for most. Let's see if we can.
And is there a latency when you do that?
Yeah, I think it's more about the tracking, because when I'm moving my hands around, it's pretty like there's not much of a latency, so I wouldn't call that an issue. But on CV1 and Index and with the inside-out tracking, where the tracking beacons are outside the headset, it's like super good. It's like millimeter precision, and it's like amazing. But then, with this, the best thing is we can use wireless setup as well. So I'm going to be, my bonfire is good, but we need something interesting here. Maybe a Stonehenge kind of a thing would be cool. Let's see. We'll make some big ass rocks here. Just sort of, and draw in some shadows for them then. One big ass rock there.
And can this be then exported as G-code?
Huh?
Can this be exported then, the object that's made?
Yeah, in 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗂𝗋.
Okay.
And FBX, I think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, people use a lot for the you have like better rendering on external.
So we could potentially print this at the Pixelache office.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. It's printable.
The fire part, right? Or the mushroom as well.
Yeah, with those shaders, it's a bit tricky.
We could create a little artifact,
Okay. I'm gonna move out the camera a bit, so I'm gonna put my camera the way I like it now, and then unparent the camera from there. I have it on the scene origin like that. And now I can go ahead and show you how things work. Cameras, move it out of the sculpt and scene origin, like that. And now I have to move my view. Now I can move my view more freely. Sculpt is nothing. And I'll hook the camera to the world origin. So this is where we're at now. We've got this sort of like a Stonehenge thing as a structure, kind of like a pie. And we'll start adding a bit more of them here. So I'll do some variations in the color a bit, not to keep it too boring. Let's see if I can put some sort of like a ruins, whatever. One is really dark, but I'm not sure if I like it so dark, but that's a nice rocks. You can go ahead and enjoy some of the detail of that rock.
Is that a pre-designed asset?
Yeah, I only use in this performance. I only use the stuff that's built in. So unless I do a custom stamp.
And you can you can save stamps and then access them through the interface.
Yeah.
And reuse them. And it saves them all for like return use of the software.
Yeah.
Yeah, they go into my into the Windows as in a personal folder. These assets, these custom brushes and stuff. And some people had some issues with it because they had like a lot of custom stuff going in, and they really weren't enjoying it because some update broke some things that when they things started crashing out too much and things like that. But so the trick was to remove those. Some of the custom stamps, all the faulty ones, so to speak. Let's give some additional color radiations here. That looks better now. That looks cool. Okay, now we've got a bonfire in and some rocks. Yeah. Some people would be nice though, but let's see. There's enough time for that. I think we do. Like I said, medium is really nice because you can kind of like dive into the scene rather well and build things around you, which is really amazing. So you can have an object which you can sort of like step in VR, and it feels like that you're in a space. And that's one of the reasons I like VR, is that it's rather scale independent compared to the real world, which is rather scale dependent. I could try painting some shadows here. Long shadows would be nice from the fire. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a mushroom. I'm going to use the color picker tool. So here, the color picker, use the color picker up here and pick the color of the mushroom like that. And then I'm going to tint it darker. So I'm going to go and scale my value lower, so I get this sort of like a shadowy tint. And let's see if I can have a steady enough hand. Maybe I'll just use a lot less strength. So I'm going to super low opacity and start painting in the long shadows from here to give it some we could go even darker, just black would be fine, I think. But this is going to the vertex color data, so it's not actually like texture data. All that stuff is UV mapped, and the auto UV apparently is not really functional in most cases. We need some shadows to make the whole thing look nice. Small details such as paying attention how shadows fall and to create an illusion of shadows in this instance are very beneficial, and they go a long way in a piece like this. But they can be exported and printed out as well. In some cases I would use Blender to have the vertex color data baked as a texture map. But most 3D printing, if you're doing colored 3D printing, that would be using it just fine as well. I'm going to dye the whole part of the mushroom darker, which is obviously not being reached by the bonfire. Sorry for the Facebook viewers, I'm unable to have a good view if I switch to the Facebook tab, then the feed that comes through the festival will be interrupted. So bear with me, and I'm going to have a small pause soon, and then I'm going to check out all the suggestions you find people have made, and then I'm going to go and incorporate them into the sculpture. Okay, I want to maybe do that darker on the base. And one of the tricks is that I probably would like to light this sculpture in a way that now as I'm turning, the lights are staying fixed. But I can use the layers panel. You see my layers panel, sorry it's a bit shaky. It's because I'm going to move this aside a bit, and if I grab my lights, they're currently here, that's my only light. I'm going to grab it and let's see where the guy is and see if we can get this light a bit better positioned in a way that would sort of like give an impression. This is a bit high, so I want to put it right just a bit and have it as a point light maybe. But I'm not sure, I think point lights don't have a shadow, so I want to have a shadow map here. I'm going to make it a lot smaller, light source, and let's see if we can get this sort of a. And once we're done with the, still very, very, very high in this scale. Oh yeah, cone width should be not big, like this. And now I need to plug in my light, and I'm going to hook it up to the sculpt layer, and it's going to move with the sculpt now. So I'm going to have a fixed light source. I'm going to tweak some environmental lights a bit as well while we're at it, because it's usually a nice. I'm going to move the light a bit. And move that aside a bit, and then Let's see if we can get a nice, better view of our whole setup. And as you see, there's a lot of light coming in from the environment to our monolithic, gigantic mushroom with a bonfire and Stonehenge on top. Could start thinking about if somebody would be building things, you know, have some supports and houses and sort of shacks and everything here. It would make it look very interesting, but it would go very much towards the fancy genre. Let's see. Environmental lights and tweak it lower. I'm going to place it so that you see it on the camera and see what a big difference it makes. I'm going to select the world, and then on the settings I would have the sun brightness. And you can see that it's affecting a lot to the... We don't need fog or anything like that, that's good. Bloom is on, that's nice. And now we have a lot more darker, sort of more, what we'll call a private sort of a view here. We've got nice shadows here falling from the mushroom. But let's start thinking, what would people be doing here? And what sort of people would be, what's the story in this shot? So we would make a new layer, and let's see if we can add in the person using the stamps. We have organic shapes with anatomic stuff, with torsos and whatnot. And starting with a torso, we place somebody sort of like sitting on the bonfire, leaning on his hands or whatever. Something like that. That's the torso. And then we add legs. I think I need to be really clever about the way I do the legs, because I don't really want them to be all straight. So just gonna plug them in at first about the right scale, or I could chop it in 2 pieces actually. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put the first thigh part in here. It's not really sitting in it, isn't it? Is it? So we need to move this guy a bit down so it's actually touching the, like that. And then we add the first leg somewhere. It's kind of hard to place because I can't swap to the top view. And then I'm going to remove that leg, this part of the lower part of the leg, just using the erase brush. So I don't need that. I have a line constraint on it. No, it's just like, it's weird, but it's fine. And then I'm going to do the other part of the leg like this. Oh, I misplaced it a bit. I'm using move tool a bit to tweak things around. I should need to get in a lot closer to do this nicely. So I'm going to be moving that thigh a bit and maybe adding some, just default brush will do, and small swap to it. Thank you. Oops. Like that. So like that. We have a part of the leg, and the other part of the leg I probably should do as a separate sculpt layer just to be on the safe side. It's going to be this right leg. So I'm going to be checking the scale about right, adding the leg. Not too worried about super details at this point, and just to have the leg there as a concept is good. and then the other leg the same way. So I'm gonna select the leg. Could actually use this stamp as well, but the other leg, do another sculpt layer so that I don't mess up with the stuff I've done. It's usually good to rename things, but in this instance I'm not too worried about it because it's a sort of like a performance thing. Let's see, placing this leg can get a bit finicky, but let's see. Move it on the other side and have the leg sort of like this. It would be great to have, there's a Masterpiece Studio which has a lot of the similar sculpting tools, but it also has like rigging and everything, which is really cool. But the thing is, like, it's on a per month subscription basis, which I actually don't like too much. I think it's silly unless you're making like tons of money with it. Let's see if we can move it from a top view and apply that brush, that leg there. First there's a straight leg, it looks kind of funny, and then we erase the up to the knee. It's a small trick that helps. Now it looks disembodied. I could fix your camera view so that you can sort of see what I'm doing better. Oh, there's some blocking view, so that's a decent view. And then I'm gonna add the other leg, about the same scale, but like that. And again, erase the rest that we don't need. It's a trick to kind of get stuff done quickly, thinking it as simply as possible. Now we've got a person with the legs sort of in a posture, but then we need, of course, a head. We'll add that one in. Let's put a female head. It sort of looks like a female maybe. We'll scale it accordingly, make a new sculpt layer. See the, maybe something like that. Erase mode, always forget that. Carried away with this thing. It's a bit wobbly, I'd say, the tracking. It's not as good as it would be on a CV1, but this is definitely an easier setup to do on a places you don't have to do all reset the tracking and all sorts of stuff. It's Quest 2 is really cool for that. Okay, then some hands. A similar method would work fine. We'll actually use that one first, and that can actually be there. It's kind of look like putting in some wood or something like that. And the other one could be just leaning. It's right, yeah. One hand. So I'm not gonna be like super precise with positioning.
Can I make a suggestion?
Uh-huh.
Could you add a crow's beak onto his face?
What?
A crow's beak, like the beak of a bird.
Yeah.
Would that be possible?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we've got a scene going on here. We need to kind of give character some color or some clothing, but looks aboriginal. So I could add a bit of some a stick or something in his hand. I'm gonna do
spear.
Spear, yeah. Let's go with that, and I'm gonna stretch it out by using the move tool. And something like that. And then I'm gonna move it. very difficult to position it with the tracking being like this. I need to zoom in a lot closer to make things work. As you can see, we do get some shadows as well, which is nice. So medium does aid us with that sort of stuff. But why would you lean on your... If you would have a stick, I wouldn't put it close to the fire or anything. Maybe something like this, I don't know. Or maybe poking with the stick, but that would be pushing it. Or barbecuing with the stick. Or burning it sharp. That's something one might do. Okay. It sort of looks a beak, so okay. Let's see. I could start off with just a regular spherical shape. And I'm going to make it a bit bigger first so it's easier to work with. I'm going to work on this.
Yeah.
Let's put this guy on the background a bit. And it's going to be a bit rough in the beginning. And then we smooth it a bit and I'll give it some shape. I'm going to cut away part of it so it gets sort of like hollow from there.
Yeah.
And maybe up here, something like that. Sort of a shape. Gonna be. It's kind of weird. It's like not all my axis feels free now for some reason, but it's fine. I'll work with angles and chisel away. And smooth away, but there might be a better way of doing it as just doing a sphere. Let's see if I'll actually erase this guy and try to do just a sphere and then use the elastic mover tool to have it bend like a lot. Let's see, position it here and then we set the shape of the peak.
Yeah, it's like a plague doctor's beak, almost like this.
Okay, let's try that. And we'll move that back to... It's really hard to do this sort of like mechanical sort of shapes with this. There probably is some smart method of doing it in Medium, but usually I just tinker around and chisel away things and sort of work the way I would with traditional methods. But
so you chisel, then you smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chisel and smooth.
And does the smoothing add material then also, like, or it just kind of normalizes?
Yeah, it normalizes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so my okay, we need something the guy to climb up to the mushroom as well.
Oh yeah.
Definitely, because otherwise it's kind of unnatural that he'd be there. Oh yeah, there's if I use reverse of inflate, that would shrink, so I could get like the sharp edges.
Oh yeah.
Like these sort of like creases. There's not a crease brush per se there, but one of these gurus in Medium, 𝗩𝗀𝗃𝗋𝗋, he's done the sculpting on the Peter Jackson's King Kong, but not with Medium though.
Didn't exist back then.
No, didn't exist back then.
Probably a lot of these tools didn't exist back then. They defined a lot of them.
Yeah, it's getting
It's
interesting.
quite a groundbreaking film. It's not really acknowledged so much, but
like these sharp creases from one end are like you need to use like combination of tools to get them, which would come pretty easily using regular subdivision modeling, which is one of my things. I've gotten rather used to them, but VR sculpting is definitely closer to real sculpting, so that's a good thing. I'm gonna grab this guy, the pig, and have this guy have a sort of like a pig mask on. Let's see, I'm gonna move around a bit. We'll put up. Okay, let's move you around a bit. Could be positioned better to find a good angle doing it, everything. That would be decent.
Oh, that's great.
It adds a lot to it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we need something the guy to come into here, but
it's very like kind of like a Mobius setting, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give him some color then. Like a crow color, so the chest would be black. Chest would be grey, but the rest of him would be rather black. So we'll start making him darker, but by using a little bit more of opacity, so we can get kind of like a darker tones quicker. The pig needs to be maybe, I mean, like crows don't have like a really bright orange.
No,
peak.
that's more blackbirds.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called in Finnish.
Rastaita, mustarastas.
Oh yeah.
We have a lot of them. Actually, it's like kind of rare species of bird around Finland, but in Western Finland, around Helsinki, they're very common.
Yeah.
Oops. Whoops. Go away. Thank you. It looks starting to look nice. So stick needs to be brownish. I'm gonna make it like a lighter shade of brown.
So the painting is almost like an airbrush tool, almost. Or...
Yeah, it has these like settings for spray or brush. I usually use the spray because it's kind of like toning little by little with a small opacity and small hardness. But the brush is very harsh, so it's not that nice. Crows have dark beaks as well, so that actually makes it kind of boring, but let's see what we can do. Let's put the chest into something like the camera so that you can see what I'm doing. It's very rough, my resolution's a bit low. I could go ahead and increase it, but I'm not going to risk it for the sake of performance now. So this computer is rather good though, so it should work fine, but I'm not taking any risks because I'm streaming in a couple of places as we're speaking. Would need something else though, maybe a hat or something. Okay, one of the most important things in any digital work is to press save now and then. I'm gonna have a really quick pause now. I'm gonna check the messenger messages, so let's take 5 minutes and we'll continue with our burning primitive fantasy landscape mushroom thing afterwards. So be right back.
Light up the audio on the stream?
That doesn't matter. I'm gonna check the messages and see how things pan out.
So I've been doing kind of these half fades so that you're kind of there also behind. But it depends on the lighting of the actual overlay, you know. But it's okay. Could I rob one off you? Because I this.
Yeah. keep on having this sort of the virtual camera detached, so we can incorporate new ideas that we received, and one of to have a face into the mushroom, and a rocky kind of a face would be super nice. So I'm gonna add a request from the audience having a face. So I'm gonna go into human anatomy and find something that would work as a face like that, and a new sculpt layer just in case, and I'm gonna just place it in front of the camera in a way that you can sort of see what I'm doing here. So I'm gonna just put a singular face here. That's a very chiseled, and I'm gonna move its proportions a bit, so everything should gonna work without any symmetry. So I want it to look a bit more primitive in a way, so we get sort of a maybe a longer nose as well, like that, and very high cheekbones.
Pronounce the brow.
Yeah, the brow could use some work as well. We are gonna add some mycelium, a tendril sort of beard to him, so he will get more incorporated into the piece. I need to have a really like steady hand doing this. I would like him to have this sort of like a very sculpted, primitive sculpture, and in this I will be using the tool from which 𝗍𝙗𝙗 showed a while ago. I think it's on primitives and this sort of pointy one. And when you start carving with this, you can get into really have it positioned nicely, so you can get a control with it. And with this, you can start working sort of like this sort of. Oops, add mode. That's not really very prominent. It's kind of getting dotty. I think my resolution needs to be higher. Could up that one. So I'm going to select this layer, and I'm going to up the resolution a couple of times for this guy. Manipulate actions and increase res once, and another time like that. Let's see if we can get better detail now. At least the dots are smaller, which is good. So continuous mode, and let's see if we can start carving some shapes here. I want it to be sort of like this sort of shapes that would be utilized in primitive sculpture. It's not really the best one, and let's see if we can get maybe some lines on this. Oh, those are way too deep. And get requires a rather steady hand. So it looks like it's been built out of blocks of rock. So that's sort of my point. I need to probably take the smoothing all the way, so those smoothing of the strokes, and then I'll be using a little small dabs of smooth, and then it's not as precise, but it will do further away to have this sort of like rocky formations, and smooth it a bit. Tracking is not as good as it would be on an inside-out tracking, some precision stuff, but it'll do. Quick dabs here and there. Maybe some inflate brush would do good on like these small areas. Just a quick dab up on deflate. More bad. Okay. Okay. Eyes look a bit too realistic in a way, but we'll continue on that and make a rocky sort of that it's done with a large piece of rock. All of them, so they have like this sort of. Whoa, it's so shaky, and my hand is rather steady. It doesn't matter now, it's gonna be fine. Another good rock would be like shape like this here, and smooth it a bit so some erosion has bitten into it as well. Connecting those pieces, that would be one piece. That. Oh, it's so dotty. Oh, now good. More larger areas. We'll just use these as a guide here. Ooh, very dotty. Still. Yeah, that's good. It's nice. Continues. That should be good. Just a tiny bit of steadiness on the stroke might help take the worst of the jiggles away. That's better now. Feels okay. Big piece of rock laid on top of each other. Interconnected. Woozy. The lower lip could be just one big piece. We need to work a bit on the symmetry, so make sure everything is sort of symmetrical. Very Mobius-like. Steve just said that it's very much reminiscent of Mobius, and yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah. Let's see, how would I do a nose? Well, structurally I would chop it into pieces, but I guess they could have just carved it out of the rock. This ancient civilization who built the ruins on top of a mushroom. Big pieces connected. Yeah, okay. Mask-like appearance. I'm just tracing just grand lines here to have this sort of a rocky feeling onto it. Not the 𝗍𝗶𝗿𝘁 from the boxing related film, but more of a sort of like material point of view. So that would be one piece of rock connecting through that maybe, and another one here and all the way down. And nostril level crease over here. Oops, that's a bit too much onto the side. And a quick dab of smoothing to take away the gnarliness of it, so it doesn't look like it. Okay, a little bit more of these lines here. Structural pieces, the nose. It's kind of funny that when we see the pyramids, and a lot of the ancient sculpture had noses removed. Apparently it was I heard that it was a lot was done, and it was easier to blow up. The sculptures were blown up by as Muslims weren't too fond of them during the times of war with the Southern Europeans after ancient times. They destroyed a lot of the sculptures as their religion wasn't too keen on representing. Yeah, and they I heard from a Iraqi guy. He told me that that the stone sculpture was easy because you could just blow things up, but a bronze sculpture, when they came in, was a lot harder to break. It would tend to just bend rather than break. So metallic sculptures have the place in terms of censorship, so it's more censorship resilient, I guess. That would be the term. Just doing this. I want the face to be kind of like just some parts of it to be connected, and going really free form to have this sort of an ancient face. It looks more like scarred now, so I need to make sure that I do decent amount of work with symmetry, so that helps to take some of the nastiness away. Okay, I have this 𝙍𝙬 and that sort of lines over here. I think that's a bit too deep. I'm not doing super detailed now, so. And I think the Quest 2 is good for like stamping stuff in, but I think like outside in tracking instead of inside out, like external tracking has its place. I would love to be able to use 3 sensor Oculus sensors, a 3 sensor setup, but use the headset. This Quest 2 has a really nice resolution and refresh rates. Blacks aren't so good because it's an LCD panel, so I'm kind of like waiting when the next generation of OLEDs come in, so that they would sort of like solve the issue with the pen tile. There's really not much of a screen door effect with these resolutions on LCD, which is nice. So the next generation of OLED is going to be great, for sure. Because I mean, like, true blacks are one of the advantages of when you're using an OLED panel. So like games that you have a lot of dark places in and everything really do work great when you're using OLED. So I still love RCB ones headsets in a lot of terms. The resolution in Quest 2 and the wireless AirLink, it's like amazing. It's really cool. It's so easy to set up and have it going, as opposed to the setting up tracking beacons and everything. But especially on mobile stuff, it's like easy. You could have I couldn't make the Oculus Link work as well as it should just from doing the laptop as a router on a 5G Wi-Fi. I think this laptop even supports 6G speeds, so there would be like plenty, but it was always kind of jerky, and it was funny. It was better going through wirelessly through the router or 5G router. We were kind of lucky that the router we already had at home worked fine with it. Not all routers are alike, so some of them might not work. So I'm going to smooth a bit, and then I'm going to place the head once I'm sort of have something. It's still too realistic. I probably want to change the features a bit so it would look more ancient somehow. So bear with me a while and I'll see what I can do to get the sort of design to the face that I was sort of looking after I got the suggestion from live stream audience that to add a face here. So the brows are really forehead and the eyes are a bit too realistic, so I want to make the eyes a bit larger, maybe make the forehead like huge, so that would probably add some sort of esoteric new age feeling to it, you know, that strange shape of heads always work fine for that.
Oh, like a Easter Island kind of?
Yeah, I was kind of looking for this sort of primitive, but it's actually hard to get really, like, once you start with something that already has, like, very close to realistic proportions, it's very hard to start seeing these sort of, like, very stylized forms out of it.
Yeah.
But it's doable, but it's always conscious solutions behind it. You can't really do that by accident. You can do stylized stuff, it kind of works out if you just disregard the anatomy and stuff like that and just go with the shapes and keep them abstract and everything. It looks great for stylized stuff. But when it comes to like with a base mesh that's already like very realistically proportioned, it may give some
So
addition.
right now you're smoothing out some of the cracks, right?
Yeah, I just don't want them to be as drilled. It kind of makes them sort of like drilled shapes rather than the shapes that I like, which I'd like them to be more like small pieces of rock, that multiple pieces of rock which are like interconnected and stacked on top of each other. May yield a more of a Egyptian look rather than an Eastern Island look. Egyptians used realistic proportions a lot in 3D. In 2D they used very stylized, close to symbolic shapes, which was kind of cool. Interesting that they did 2D very stylized, but then they did the 3D parts very realistically proportioned, as opposed to classical sculpture, which is classical painting. They used realistic proportions all around. Let's put a
One could
gem
argue
here.
that the idea of realistic proportions is a little bit Eurocentric, because even though we have like you can maybe see some direct photorealism or whatever, we're not so conscious of our own stylistic kind of
biases.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we do have this. Even though, I mean, like in European animations, it's not very realistic. It rarely is. It's very stylized.
True.
At least the hand-drawn ones.
Yeah, very true.
So but I haven't seen a lot of like in 3D. They always look this kind of DreamWorks Disney stuff mostly, but all realistic. There's not a lot of middle ground there. But I mean, some people do, and people go, you need to work on your proportions more, and it will be interesting to see what sort of stuff in due time we start seeing around.
But even I think DreamWorks is, there's a meme about the DreamWorks kind of smirk that a lot of the characters have.
The crooked smile thing. Yeah, it's actually kind of annoying, because I mean, like they found something that really works in all angles. I mean, in 2D you can always cheat and make something that works, in one angle, not the other. But in 3D you have to make sure it kind of like works all around.
Yeah, true.
Which makes it something that you, in order to balance and have the continuity of the forms in a coherent manner, ends up looking kind of like the same.
Yeah.
It's like one solution fits all type of thing, which is not really ideal in terms of art. Because art should be a lot about experimentation and finding new things as well. There are some really cool 3D stuff that I've been seeing that are very stylized as well, and they take a lot of liberty in terms of stylization from the sort of UPA style animation or this sort of hand-drawn thing, but it's still in the same consensus that's considered an animation, even though animation is not a genre. It's like animation has genres in it. I mean,
sure, of course.
There are like horror animation, science fiction, family, art house animations, all kinds.
It's like when people say that they like anime, but like what type of anime do you like? If there isn't like one genre within that whole scene or within that whole like category,
Yeah. It's a bit off, but there's a separate piece over there. Let's see if this can kind of work. Smooth it real quick. So it looks sort of like built from a blocks of around the same size that would be stacked on top of each other. Okay, yeah, this feed will be in the virtually yours page to be reviewed afterwards. There's a nasty pause there, but I had to have a small pause over there in order to get messages in and the suggestions in from the online audience. But this is starting to work out fine. It's usually that time you invest into something that it ends up looking like something. In the beginning, it's always a bit what I call it. In the beginning, it's always a bit challenging to believe into what you're doing, but once you've done it a few thousand times, you start kind of trusting your gut that okay, it's gonna look good in the end. That's what counts. This is very rough, but yeah, let's just flow with that, and we'll see how these rocks would sort of look once I add some actual rock elements onto it as well with it. I'm just going to do it on the same layer by using the rock primitives. There are rocks over here, so I'm going to start adding some blocks which sort of look similar in one way or the other to get some rock texture here. That maybe. And maybe this one would go around here. So it starts looking more like a giant sculpted thing. Okay, so we have that one on this side, so I'm going to do another one on the other side. And on the cheekbone, I had this protruding one. I'm going to use another one over here. A bit asymmetrical. That looks kind of cool. Starting to look like something. And I want a green gems into his eyes, and maybe a red one or something onto the. But actually, these blocks would separate better if I color them. But let's see if we have time for that. Let's see if we can put the jawbone-ish shapes in.
Approximately 20 minutes remaining.
Yeah, we have 20 minutes, and so I kind of like laid out this sort of like landlines for the shapes, and then I'm filling them in with a stamp to give it some more impression. I'm only concentrating on the frontal part of the face because it's going to be embedded into the mushroom soon, so you'll see how it kind of works with that. So it's sort of like these sacred places which had these it's a bit too high. Sacred places, like in Finland we have these seita places all around Finland, which were like during the pagan times they were like sacred places, and they were mostly I'm going to put a single. They were mostly because they had some very interesting features in them. Most of the times they did resemble like humans and stuff like that, and you might see bears or animals and stuff like that, and that's why people considered them as sacred, because it's an effect called pareidolia, in which humans have a tendency, we're kind of like hardwired of seeing faces everywhere. And in some cases, people, when they saw faces in ancient times, they would kind of like do just a little bit more elbow grease to kind of bring it forth, which I thought was great. I'm going to put these larger blocks like this. So he's going to have a little bit of an ornament here. Maybe I'll replace that. It's kind of funny with an ornament, so it gets maybe a bit better in terms of an ancient god of some sort. Or something like that. very fantasy oriented content, yeah. But I always think that fantasy, especially in these times, fantasy has been proven to contain more truth than societies or politics these days. So that's kind of interesting. Not in all cases, of course, but okay. So maybe a rocky face.
That's really nice.
It adds a lot of small details into it. These small crevices and bumps here.
So will you lighten that up before you bring it over, or will you, like, when you embed it into the mushroom?
Yeah, I'm just going to chop that part of the face off that I don't need and then sink it in and then add the supporting elements. Most likely I'll be using these sort of like roots and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this is going to be looking a bit like a crown or something.
Does anyone else in the audience want to ask Albert anything while you're here?
How long does it take to learn to do that, what you're doing?
Probably, I mean, like with Medium, it's pretty fast. I could like give a really quick tutorial to people so they could start working in a half an hour or so. These tools are rather simple. Yeah, that's not too bad.
You just need to have Oculus, I suppose, to do it at home.
Yeah, there's a Masterpiece VI if you're on other platforms, so that is pretty cool as well, but it's on a subscription basis, like I mentioned earlier, which I think is not a strong feat these days. I mean, like a lot of content creators are pissed off about that everything is like subscription based these days.
Yeah, it's a pity.
Yeah, it's because it's like kind of like blackmailing, because I mean a lot of creative artists these days are freelancers. It's kind of like you're still paying even if you're not working with it. And then it becomes into like, okay, because I'm paying the subscription, I have to, keep learning or doing something, and it ends up being this like all work and no play sort of thing. That's why I love these sort of like a lot of free tools like Blender. They're amazing and they're really good for even like all kinds of commission work and everything. So you can really do good stuff with them. So that's kind of like a win-win, I think. But I do understand like Masterpiece VR, there's not a lot of money behind it. So they don't have the luxury of giving their tool out for free. Okay, I'm gonna add a couple of final rocks over here. Maybe that one. Yeah. To have this sort of bit of texture, the rock gives a nice uneven texture to it. So we sort of even if we have some like repeating shapes, it's not that bad when it comes to these, because once you tile them up in different scales and orientations, they sort of end up looking kind of nice. Okay, now we have the closer to what I was going for, and a large chunk over here. Looks like a bearded guy now, it's good.
When you do these sculptures, are there some certain forms that you
Sorry?
kind of gravitate towards?
Sorry?
Are there some certain forms, for
Yeah.
instance, human face or something like that, that you gravitate towards when you do these?
Yeah, there's in the clay brush, once you click the thumb button here with the gear icon, you can get this sort of like when you select, there's like three types, well, these basic brushes over here, the sphere, the rectangle, or the cube, or the capsule brush. If you click on stamps, you see stamps, and there's a bunch of them according to these sort of lists. You see them, the like rock symbols, traditional. Then the symbols, there's like not that much. There's a heart and check mark and star, and not that much. Letters, there's all sorts of letters, so you can write things by just clicking, and it places that sort of an object. There's some cloth objects, but and bones, of course. So they are like skulls and stuff like that. So you can use these as a sort of like a starting point, but you need to place them manually to make things work. Then there are like all sorts of traditional sculpting brushes that you can use to scrape, for instance. Yeah, so these are really handy. I've been using extensively on this one the rock stamps. So to get this sort of like trying to get rid of all of the smoothness and have this sort of textured feeling all around. I'm just using my ley lines as a sort of a guide how to place them around. So I'm using the same one over and over again, but it's just enough because it gives texture. Oh, it's so shaky. If it gets too shaky, get very close in and you can get like really detailed in like this. Place them around. Gonna rotate it so it's gonna be another way around. That helps to break the uniformity as well. And yeah, I think we're okay. I'm gonna add these and then these rocks in and then add some tendrils and whatnot. And this part needs another rock. So rocks, and let's try out that one. See if we can place that one close. I'm hiding some of the crimes. It's an old school method of.
We won't tell anyone.
Well, that looks rather detailed and sort of primitive, sort of horrible. I don't know. It's a bit horror themed now. I don't like that too much. But yeah, just adding some texture here, so that getting away from all the. In game development, it's been used extensively. You can use the same assets over and over again, especially in rocks, because in nature things are kind of like repeating itself anyway. So it kind of lends itself very well for environmental design. Just stamp them around and in Unreal or whatever tool your choice is, and have a whole bunch of rocks. Even if you're using the only like 5 or 6 assets, if you're really like economic with them, you can go just a few trees and rocks and knickknacks, and you can get stuff done. I try to pay attention here into the structure, so it's sort of like believable in terms of that it might be built like that. But I think that's pretty close and pretty good. Yeah, the rocks are kind of nice because even it doesn't matter what your scale is, rocks will still sort of end up looking like rocks. So you know how you can even grab like a small rock on the beach, and if you zoom in really closely, it might be a giant rock as well, because it still follows the similar structure and guidelines. It has this, I think nature has this sort of 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗆 thing going on. So yeah.
In a lot of like actual like model making with traditional means, it's common to take a casting of a rock, but you would reuse the same piece, but you might like kind of just break a little piece off of the transfer or the print of it, or you might even use a rock surface to create rock texture on the medium as well. So it's quite similar to that.
Yeah, you can do stamps where like put something that takes sort of like a mold of a rock shape, and after that you can press it around into clay or whatever, and you can get I used that in polymer clay stuff. It's really fun. I have some stamps, some textures that I like, and then it becomes a lot easier and quicker to work with. Because anyway, I mean, people tend to. I mean, I just watched a documentary about how they did the Nostromo in Alien, and how they did how ILM did the practical models for Star Wars and stuff like that. And they had this term called 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝘁. 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗁, yeah. And it's like similar is in 3D. We use the same stuff these days.
Yeah, they would. They'd have particular model kits that they liked to use, like which were, I think, models of aircraft landers, World War II bombers, and they would take the little fixtures from those kits and kind of sci-fi them up a bit, you know.
Yeah. It's because like.
So it's like kit bashing almost.
Kit bashing, yeah. Kit bashing, definitely, yeah. And this sort of like contains a lot of kit bashing elements as well, because we have these sort of stamps available. So it's in almost all terms it is kit bashing. Okay, take the ear off, and we'll try to sync it in a way to the mushroom that would contain as much of the detail that we made. And we'll add a couple of rocks in the end to kind of like let it flow into it. And now we'll place it into our...
This is the moment of truth.
Yeah, let's see what... Maybe this would be a good angle. Isolinium. That looks gnarly.
Yeah. Would you be able to lighten the texture a bit of the face?
Yeah, I'm gonna paint it a bit. I could actually just go ahead and add a light to that.
Oh yeah, lovely.
Just for that, but I need to make it a bit point light and less brightness, so we can get it kind of like visible. Now let's incorporate these things together. So we'll start making some tendrils, or these sort of like roots. That face looks kind of cool because there's like a lot of detail in it now.
We have approximately 10 minutes left.
Okay, 10 minutes left, people. So I'm gonna just be like super quick. Gonna be adding a lot of these sort of tendrils, all these sort of things, and make them really, 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 really thin.
Oh yeah.
So we get these sort of like root thingies going on. Oh, that's too thick. No, I don't know.
That kind of works though.
It could work. Maybe a different color though. Bit darker green or something like that.
Yeah.
Ooh. 10 minutes left, people. Some go here and curve around the rocks. Okay, there's no tapering on scale. We're kind of like on the threshold of having. Oh yeah, there's the idea of the beard thing, so it would have to come in and grow from here and follow these shapes, and it's kind of chopping a bit because I need to increase its resolution a bit, just a bit, and redo a couple of them. And then we'll see how it looks once the roots are incorporated. It's kind of dark on this end, so I probably need to tone it up a bit, but let's put another one. We need to hide this place up. Hide the hole, so we would have some growing through here, and
Oh yeah. Like it's a tumbling tree.
okay, that's nice. That went okay. some of it might grow up as well. So it's filling in some of the gaps. And splitting on some ends, and we are getting close to finishing it. So, whoa, yeah, it's been another intensive ride as well. Like always, it's exciting and sort of amazing. Also a bit stressful sometimes.
It's very different when you're doing something like this because you can get very lost in the process, right?
Yeah. Could have some tendrils that are sort of like different color, more like this mushroom, to kind of like have some of these guys in here as well. So to hide this one. And one thing, he needs to be able to climb up, so I'm gonna try and do a really quick ladder here. He needs to be able to climb there, so I'm gonna be using it.
Like a rope ladder?
Yeah, or maybe a rope ladder would be great. So the vector would be something like that, and then from all the way down. And another one. It's difficult to get position. Okay, now we have and a plateau, a new layer, and a quick base for the whole thing, and a line application of, do it as a single, and do it really big, so we get this sort of ground plane.
Oh, there you go.
So it becomes a whole thing now, sort of. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty much it. I could maybe change the color of that a bit, so I'm gonna to separate it a bit from the mushroom shape. I'm gonna paint it a bit. Soon we will be done on this instance. Thank you, Pixelache Festival. It's amazing.
Woo!
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, let's see the result.
Still kind of like doing the final tweaks on it.
Okay.
And thank you, people, followers of Virtual Yours project. Thank you for the comments and suggestions. You're the people who gave the idea to do this thing. There's the mushroom, there's the bonfire, there's the face. As far as I'm concerned, all of the things are now incorporated into this. I will go ahead and save at this time as well, just to be on the safe side.
Can you send me that file? Like, can you export it like for printing? It would be really nice to have it in the office.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, they tend to be massive.
We can talk about it after.
Yeah, we need to go and see how that will work out. But it's definitely doable.
Can you zoom in so we can see what you have there?
There's a face, an ancient face on the side of a mushroom.
If you shut the door, you'll see the bit there.
Okay, yeah.
I'm gonna real quick and do some ladders here. Two is very, very, very big, and
Oh, it's really dark.
and I'm gonna see if I can do some sticks of wood. Maybe I'll use just planks to just pile a whole lot of these there. I'm not too keen on how exactly the pacing is or spacing, but
So I'm surprised that we end up with some weird darkness.
what?
Am I surprised that we end up with some weird darkness?
well, it's not me, it's the people. They told me to do this.
I don't believe that.
That's what I always do.
Yeah, I'm not like too super precise. I'm good if the guy can climb up here with this.
Yeah, you have to keep it based in reality, Albert.
Yeah, okay. So thank you, everybody. It's been an amazing experience. This is definitely one of the most interesting looking pieces done ever. So it's very interesting. The concept is very interesting, and I might even be keen to gearing towards actually texturing and shading and making like a nice background to it and have like a full scenery from this. So I'm just going to show it to the camera like real good. So we have this face, an ancient rock face. I could probably tweak with the lights to make it appear a bit better.
Yeah, that'd be great.
My light.
It's very clear on the stream though, it's just in the room that it's, we have light leaks from outside.
Yep. Okay, so
That's better, yeah. Oh yeah.
So we can see maybe from below to have this sort of like a...
It's also nice that you light it up with a torch. It suggests that it's a find in the middle of nowhere. Which it almost is, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see how can... Okay. Something that will kind of like bring out the shapes. There's a lot of shapes in that. So it's a kind of tricky to...
But what's on top now? There's a bit of a Stonehenge thingy?
Yep. There's a Stonehenge thingy and a bonfire and a primitive some sort of native with a stick and a beak. So he's doing a ritual on top of the mushroom.
Interesting.
How
many different people contributed to the development?
I don't know. 7, 5, something.
That's really interesting.
Oh, why won't you move there? I want to move you there onto the sculpture. Okay, whatever will work.
If you wish to sleep outside, you can.
Okay.
Sleep there.
And on this sculpt layer, my light needs to be a bit different. Maybe not so strong. Okay. All right, so we have a ladder in which the ancient shaman climbed all the way to the top of the giant mushroom, where he has his bonfire and a ritual.
Wearing some sort of plague mask.
Yeah. Well, Corona times.
Yeah.
So, thank you everybody. It was amazing having you and around with your ideas, and now we have another totally surprising. Never knew what's coming up with these things, but I'm very happy with it. It's a nice little scene, and we'll meet up again on the next iteration of Virtually Yours. Thank you.